Hello and welcome to Business India with me Tarun. The domestic copper producing industry in India is almost entirely dependent on the import of copper concentrate for its production. But export restrictions in major copper concentrate supplying countries threatens the local industry. Indonesia has already imposed a ban on copper concentrate export in January, which led to acute shortage of raw materials for Indian manufacturers. It has not been replaced by export tax of 60%, but a ban will be back in January which will replace the current 60% export tax. To discuss this emerging situation where the Indian copper manufacturers have to cut capacity utilization, we have with us Mr. P. Ramnath, CEO, Copper Business Vedanta Limited and Vice President, the Indian Primary Copper Producers Association, and Mr. J.C. Ladha, CEO, Copper Business Aditya Birla Group and Vice President of the Indian Primary Copper Producers Association. I go across to Mr. Ladha for his opening comment on this issue.
Tarun, just to give you a background, when we started the custom smelters in India, that time the duty protection was 33%, which has now come down to 2.5%.
Yes.
So when we started, we had a reasonable, perhaps level playing field. We perhaps had the reasonable profits. However, as the time has passed, the duty protection has gone down, and because of FTAs, there is a situation of inverted duty structure.
Okay.
Now, as you rightly mentioned, the 96-97% of copper concentrate which is required by custom smelters is imported, because hardly we have any copper concentrate in India, and we have to import from far off places. It comes from Peru, Chile, Australia, Indonesia, and just to give you the size of amount which is required by way of working capital, say the material which comes from South America, the voyage time is 45 to 60 days.
Yes.
Then we have to maintain 30 days inventory because we are dependent on 100% imported raw material. And once we put the concentrate into the first operation of smelting, it takes about 45 days. So it's a question of maintaining the working capital of 125 to 135 days. And this, if we convert in terms of value, is about over 10,000 crores for the domestic copper industry, which is huge. Added to that, the mines are becoming old, the impurity levels of the copper concentrate is going up, and it also is having the issues of filing grades, which means the cost of production to treat this imported concentrate is going up and up. On the other side, the realization is coming down. So there is a need to address this situation immediately without any further delay, which means the duty on copper concentrate should come down from 2.5% to 0, and we should also explore if there are copper mines, concentrate mines available in India.
Okay, that's a very important point made by you. Copper concentrate mines in India, we have to see whether copper concentrate mines are available in India or the kind of survey which are viable, and the survey needs to be done to that effect. I am going across to Mr. Ramnath for his opening comment on today's discussion.
Well, as Mr. Ladda said, we are dependent on copper concentrate imports for the custom smelter. We are basically a custom smelter, where we do not have mines of our own, and we are 100% dependent on imports of copper concentrate from countries like Chile, Indonesia, Australia, etc. So therefore, it is very, very important that we have a very, very strong source of copper concentrate to ensure that we have continuous production. And as Mr. Ladda already said, we have a huge working capital to take care of, which is close to about, say, 10,000 crores for the entire industry. And the entire cycle of conversion is roughly around two months from the time the concentrate is shipped out. So therefore, what we see is that we have, in competition to or in comparison with other smelters around the world, we are at a disadvantage. Number one, because say our Chinese counterparts, our Japanese counterparts have got tie-ups with various mines across the world, whereby they have an offtake from those mines, so they are able to get some sort of preferential.
India needs to go and think in terms of
we have to probably look at
not speaking in terms of sourcing of copper concentrate, as Mr. Ramnath rightly pointed out. I take the example of Indonesia. If you see in the past 3 to 4 years, Indonesia has been restricting exports of various minerals, starting with coal, where it imposed a kind of duty. After coal, it also went to utilities, it also went to kind of minerals like copper concentrate, where there was a 60% export duty. Clearly, Indonesia wants to encourage domestic smelter capacities. It wants the domestic industry to develop. That's why it is restricting exports. How does that affect India, and why India should all the more look for encouraging domestic smelter capacities and restricting imports? Because Indonesia does it, India should also act in its own interest.
I fully agree. The steps which are being taken by Indonesia is impacting the local industry, particularly the custom smelters, in a big way. There is always a sort of uncertainty. As the things are uncertain, we have already planned to substitute the imports from Indonesia to the other destinations, so that our operations are not impacted. However, it means the cost goes up because Indonesia is nearby, freight cost is comparatively lower, but if you have to substitute this same quality of concentrate, then we have to go to South America again, whereby our cost goes up further.
Okay.
But there is no choice, and in this situation, as I mentioned earlier also, we should look for the participation of Indian operators into the mines, as well as government support to this custom smelters.
Okay, I am going across to Mr. Ramnath. How do you see Indonesia's reaction, and when it is promoting its domestic industry, what should be India's reaction?
Well, number one, I think what we should look at is the possibility of locating copper sources within the country. As of now, what the known sources are very little. It is just about less than 5% of the total requirement of the country, and all these mines are owned by Hindustan Copper as captive mines. Of course, the government has located certain copper mines, and I think duly and shortly, I think they are planning to put it out on auction. But it is to be seen as to how many of these copper mines are actually viable for operation. That is number one. I think we should also probably look at having tie-ups with the mines abroad, so that we have a preferential offtake from these mines. The third thing, I think, as I said, we definitely are at a disadvantage with our counterparts in Japan and China, in that they already have tie-ups with various mines across the world. They also have access to very low interest funds. And the third thing is that they do not have to pay any additional freight, because the freight from say South America or Australia, etc., either to Japan or to China, is included in the cost of
it's bundled
it's bundled into the cost, whereas we have to pay a freight differential. That is the differential freight that it would take from a consignment to be sent to China vis-a-vis to be sent to India.
Yes.
So we have to pay that differential freight rate that is there.
Okay.
So that is a disadvantage that we certainly have to face.
Indian primary copper producers have another challenge when they look at securing copper concentrate, which is the basic mineral required for copper production. India needs to have long-term supply contracts with countries, with the African continent, many countries there, Australia, Peru and Chile. How does the Indian domestic copper producers see that happening? What support the domestic copper industry needs? I'll request Mr. Ladha to share that with us.
In fact, we already have the long-term contracts to the extent of 80% or over 80% of our total requirement, which means that we have already securitized the raw material requirement. However, as I said, the support which we need is in terms of the duty on the raw material, because it is always good and it makes an economic sense to have lower duty on the raw material as compared to the finished goods. And there where we have been requesting, and I think government is receptive to this suggestion that the import duty which is there of 2.5% should come down. The other aspect, as we mentioned, is yes, we have to think of having some stake in the overseas mines, which means it again needs huge investment, which is a limiting factor for the producers because of the situation of the industry which is there as of now.
Okay.
And added to this, the concentrate mines which are becoming old, impurities level going up, copper content coming down, this is adding to the cost of production. So we have to really struggle with various factors to take care of our operations.
Okay, okay. Struggle with various factors to keep up with the production is the kind of problem that Mr. Ladda highlighted. I am going across to Mr. Ramnath and asking him the question of imports and securing long-term contracts with the African continent and other countries.
As Mr. Ladda has said, we already have long-term contracts. We have long-term contracts to the extent of about say 80-85% of the total requirement, and we buy to the extent of about 10 to 15% on the spot market, basically to take advantage of the TCRC, at that particular point in time. The TCRC is basically the kind of discount that we get as a conversion charge, from the LME, and that is what it is one of the revenue streams that we have. So our long-term goal is to have a 100% long-term contract for the entire 100% of our requirements, so that we are completely sure of and we are 100% secured in terms of raw material. And definitely, I mean, we are certainly looking forward to the government in supporting us in this aspect. So by reducing the copper duty, the copper concentrate duty from 2.5% to 0%, so that we move in this particular direction as quickly as possible.
Okay. Now, if I go and ask, there is one point that I would like to highlight. The Indian smelters have been what you can say facing competition from Chinese, Japanese, Korea and European smelters. Does India match up to their cost of production? What kind of support do they have as compared to India? Mr. Ladda, if you could share with us each of the competitiveness or the cost advantage or the incentives that the Chinese, Japanese, Koreans and Europeans have over India.
In fact, what you said is right. In India, there are a lot of issues which adds to the cost of the production of the copper. As compared to this, other countries have subsidies of various kinds which are given to the industry. It could be the power subsidy, it could be the export support. By various means it is being given to the industries in other countries. We are as of now in the process of studying those supports which are being given by other countries, so that we can then take up with the government of India that okay, these are the subsidies which these countries are getting and they are producing and sending the material to India, and which is creating problem for the local industry. So to give a level playing field, they should definitely think of giving some support to the local producers.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ramnath, how do you see this happening, and what are the incentives that they get that you would likely want for the domestic industry?
Well, foremost, as we have said in the past, is the low interest rate finance, which all these companies, all these smelters are have access to. And secondly, the subsidies like the power subsidies. Chinese smelters, definitely their power is subsidized. So definitely, they have that huge kind of advantage on the cost of production that they have. So offhand, I can think of these two, but certainly I think there are several other incentives and subsidies that all these smelters do get. And one more, as I said, the freight differential that we have to pay in addition to the kind of freight which they enjoy, the kind of advantage that these smelters enjoy. So these are definitely, I think, would certainly help the domestic industry to match up to the competition.
Okay, that's an important point made by Mr. Ramnath. If I take the case of Japan, Japan has access to high quality raw materials, copper ores and concentrates. In Chile, through strategic finance linked tie-ups, Japan benefits. Can India also take the case of Japan and implement it in India with getting support from the government? Is that possible, Mr. Ladda?
Again, it's going to be difficult for me to say, but definitely seeing the situation which is there today for the domestic industry, in my view, government has to think of giving various kinds of supports which are possible and which definitely help the local industry, and by that means we also become part of the economic growth story, Make in India story for our country.
Okay, I am going across to Mr. Ramnath. Mr. Ramnath, I would like to understand from you, internationally, if you see the case of securing raw materials, especially minerals, it involves a lot of diplomatic relations, as in case of China's engagement with the African continent, where it gives billions of dollars in aid to African countries and then tries to secure whether it's crude oil resources, whether it is mineral resources. Do you think to that effect the Ministry of External Affairs too must take up the cause of India with the Ministry of Commerce to ensure that India ensures a steady supply of copper concentrate in the coming decade?
Yeah, certainly I think that would really go a long way to secure the copper concentrate that we have. I think the government is certainly moving in that direction by deepening the kind of preferential trade agreements that we already have with Chile, which is a major source of raw material. And currently, of course, we are getting raw material from Chile at 10% preferential duty. And what we expect from this deepening of PTA, which is due to be signed shortly, is that the copper concentrate will be available at 0% duty from Chile. So I think this would really go a long way in ensuring that the domestic industry benefits from this kind of intervention by the government.
Okay.
So these are positive steps that the government is taking, and we are looking forward to more such positive steps with Australia as well.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ladda, how do you see this happening?
As Mr. Ramnath says, yes, whatever FTAs or preferential trade agreements which are being negotiated, there are two issues. One is, of course, the raw material, where the duty should be zero if the imports are coming from those countries, and the exports of finished goods, then the duty should be increased. So if these two things are taken care by putting the finished goods in the negative list, perhaps local industry definitely can be protected. And as Mr. Ramnath said, the government is very positive, working towards this direction, and that will go big way
but do
to
you
help the
think
local
that
industry.
since these are much smaller countries than India, do you think our economic participation in their economy via aid and investment should be increased so that we have greater goodwill like Japan and China to secure supplies?
In fact, it is happening also, and directionally what you say is absolutely right.
Yes.
This will help them, and once they get the help, they will reciprocate.
Okay.
And once they have the copper concentrate,
Yes.
Definitely they will be more positive,
Yes.
and we can then depend more
Okay.
on those sources,
Okay.
like countries like Chile and Peru.
Okay,
particularly.
Chile and Peru particularly. I am going across to Mr. Ramnath and going to ask him the same question on how India should increase its economic cooperation with these countries.
I think the government is already doing in this direction, and we are, as I said, we are in the process of deepening our relationship with Chile by offering various products and various other lines, at preferential rates of duty. For example, automobiles and various such products that we are strong in, and so that we find additional markets for our products in these countries at lower rates of duty.
Okay.
And at the same time, trying to get advantage for our industry, local industry, by bringing in the kind of products that Chile is strong in, like for example, say copper concentrate and various marine products, etc. So it's a step in the positive direction, and we are looking forward to more such steps.
Okay. Mr. Ladda, if you see the current copper production capacity is about a million or so tons, if I am not wrong. We expect to grow to how many million tons in the next 5 or 7 or 10 years or the next decade, and that means how much more copper concentrate will the domestic industry have to secure from abroad?
See, as of now, as you rightly said, we have a capacity of about 1 million tons, and if we have to fulfill the demand which the country would be needing in the coming years, because various sectors are needing that much copper, the requirement will go up maybe threefold in next 5 to 7 years.
Yes.
Which means the concentrate requirement also will go up to that extent.
Yes.
As of now, the copper concentrate which is required is about 2.5 million,
Yes.
which again then will go up to about 7.5 to 10 million
Okay.
metric tons. If that much local capacity is created in India.
Yeah, okay.
I am using the word if because to basically invest in the custom smelters, we will have to request the government to support so that our investments remain viable, and we can help generating the employment and also produce the copper which is required for various sectors within the country.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ramnath.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would echo what Mr. Ladda has said. We are really looking forward to a lot of support from the government in the coming time. so that the domestic industry really operates to full capacity, and we are we do have access to copper concentrate from all these countries at low rates of duty, which will help us become competitive in the world, and therefore also fulfill the kind of demand which the country is expected to grow to.
Okay. With the reference to the India-Chile PTA, what are your expectations?
Our expectations, as I said, is to have 0% duty on the copper concentrate from Chile.
That's one of the major demands. If that happens, then
yes, yes.
Okay.
And of course, we also want that the finished product should not come in from Chile. That's another demand that we have.
Since we are securing raw material, it
Yes.
makes no sense. Yes, Mr. Ladda.
In fact, as he mentioned, just to add to that,
Yes.
the Chile is having a huge capacity of finished goods. They produce 5 million tons of cathode,
5 million tons.
and their local requirement is hardly 500,000.
Okay.
So they are looking for
So
the
they may-
avenues to export
Okay.
the balance quantity.
Yes.
So we have requested the government, and they were quite positive
Yes.
to not to have the zero imports, however to put the quantitative restriction
Quantitative.
of the
So
imports of
beyond a
finished goods.
certain percentage of-
Absolutely. So
okay.
that they also get advantage, and the local
So
industry
we are not
also.
seen as adversaries, but as
Correct.
partners.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. Now, with rights to customs duty, where on the one side where we are securing copper concentrate, we need to have a deterrence, as Mr. Ramnath and Mr. Ladda said. Mr. Ramnath, what is the ideal custom duty rate that you would request the government of India to include?
For finished products, as I said, we are looking at a customs duty of 7.5% on the finished goods which come into the country, which will place the domestic industry in a good stead in order to compete with these imports. And we are looking at 0% custom duty on the concentrate which is coming in,
Okay.
so that we are able to compete in the world market.
Mr. Ladda, what level are imports illegally coming into India, bypassing rules and regulations, or with very minimum value addition, just to ensure that they meet the legal criteria, but in spirit of the law, they are not following the spirit of the law, maybe they are following the letter of the law?
As you rightly said, and as we have already discussed, the FTAs which are there needs a review. The FTAs which have been signed, there are some loopholes which needs to be plugged when they come up for review, and ASEAN FTA is due for review during this year, and Japanese FTA is due for review in the coming year. So these are the opportunities where perhaps whatever lacunas or loopholes were there, those can be plugged. That will go in a big way to support the Indian industry.
If we take the kind of numbers and the kind of, if we do future gazing, I want to ask Mr. Ramnath two things. What is the kind of investment in this sector that he expects to go in the next decade or so as new capacities come up? What is a rough estimate that he would can give us?
Well, I would say that I think the investment in this sector could be over the next decade or so, could be to the tune of maybe 10,000 crores or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
10,000 crores by all the manufacturers put
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
Mr. Ladda, if the investment is going to be to the tune of 10,000 crores, what kind of employment potential would you see? Because currently you are talking in terms of 50-60,000 people. Do you see this going up to a lakh or maybe more?
I'll put this in a different way. If the coming up demand of copper is to be fulfilled by the local industry, there is a need to create much more local capacity, which means if we have to take care of the entire coming up demand, we need the investment of about 30,000 to 40,000 crores,
Yes.
which means there is a opportunity to increase the employment, direct employment to the extent of 40,000, 50,000, and if we take the indirect employment, it will go say up to 2 lakh numbers.
2 lakh.
Approximately.
Yes, Mr. Ramnath, are you really positive, and do you expect the kind of investments that you have talked of to come in? When would you see these investments kicking in, say around 2018, 2019, or are they already happening?
There are some of the investments are on the anvil, and I think they are basically looking at getting some clearances through. Some announcements have already been made. So I think by 2019 or so, these investments should be in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Ladda, when you talk of giving the kind of incentives that the domestic industry needs, do you see the Indian copper or the primary copper manufacturers becoming a source of export or emerging as a local exporter in the nations in and around, say, Asian or ASEAN nations, or in and around Asia? Do you see that happening in the future, or do you think domestic demands would be enough to meet the needs of the domestic production capacity?
To my mind, the demand which is likely to be coming up by various sectors, whatever we produce perhaps will be consumed within India.
Okay.
However, there could be small surpluses sometimes which then can be exported to the nearby countries.
Okay.
So that could be a possibility.
Now
of
I'm moving up to my round of closing comments with regards to securing copper concentrate and the discussion that we've had. Mr. Ramnath, what is your closing comment for this discussion today?
Copper concentrate is a major raw material for the copper industry in India, and we are looking forward to having the kind of tie-ups with through PTA with Chile and Australia, and also looking forward to the government and helping the domestic industry by lowering the copper concentrate import duty from all other countries to 0%. So I think this would go a long way in ensuring that the domestic industry is viable in the long run, and also support the Make in India concept of the government.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ladda, your closing comment for today's discussion.
I would like to put it like this, to sum up on the copper concentrate. As we are dependent on 100% import of copper concentrate, we have to really keep our eyes and ears open 24/7, because any happening, any incidents anywhere in the mine globally with whom we are having long-term contract will then impact the supply. So we have to keep a constant sort of vigil that our source of copper concentrate supply is maintained, because every day we need the copper concentrate.
Okay.
And for that, this is very, very important. The second aspect is, as we are dependent on imports, it is very important that sooner the better if we can sign the preferential trade agreements with these countries, so that the copper concentrate then can come at zero duty.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your views on this discussion today. So as we see, the Indian copper manufacturers urgently need that the import duty on concentrate be brought to 0% via preferential trade agreements with countries like Chile. It also needs or requests a diplomatic engagement with the countries who have the kind of copper concentrate that is required for a fast growing economy like India. We will track the story for you here on News World India and see how this happens in the coming year's budget, as well as the initiatives from the Government of India for promoting the domestic copper industry. Thank you so much for joining us on Business India today. Thank you.
Thank you.